Have you ever noticed how the most intense moments in life aren't usually the loudest? We've been conditioned to believe that intimacy is a race, a frantic dash to a finish line, where speed and intensity are the only measures of passion. We think that to truly wow a man, we have to give more, do more, and go faster. But there is a secret, a quiet power that most people completely overlook. The real secret to breaking a man's composure and turning him into a screaming mess doesn't lie in how much energy you exert. It lies in your mastery of tempo and the art of anticipation. It's about the breathless silence that precedes a storm. When you control the clock, you control his reaction. Most women wait for their partner to set the pace, but today we are exploring something different. We are looking at a specific pattern, a slow, deliberate build that bypasses his logic and strikes directly at his core. It's not about the physical act, it's about the psychological tension you create. Stick with me, because once you understand the power of the unspoken, you will never look at your connection the same way again. For many of us, intimacy can eventually start to feel like a familiar script. You know the steps, you know the cues, and you know exactly where the story is going to end. It's comfortable, yes, but does it still feel electric? When things become predictable, the mind starts to drift and the spark begins to fade into a routine. But tonight, we are reversing that narrative entirely. You are no longer just a participant in the experience. You are the architect. You are the one drawing the blueprints for an experience that he won't just enjoy, but will be utterly consumed by. This isn't about physical effort or performance. It's about a psychological pattern that creates a specific, overwhelming emotional response. Imagine being so in tune with his reactions that you can dial his intensity up or down with just a slight intentional shift in your rhythm. By stepping into this role of the leader, you aren't just changing the physical act, you're changing the power dynamic. You are guiding him through a landscape of sensations he didn't even know he could feel. It's about taking that routine and turning it into a masterpiece of tension and release. As we move through this, I want you to feel that shift in your own personal power. You are the one who knows exactly what is coming next, while he is left in a state of wonderful, desperate curiosity. Let's dive deeper into how this works. The male nervous system hijack. To truly master this pattern, we have to look under the hood. We need to understand the male nervous system, not as a medical textbook would, but as a map for deep intimacy. Most men are used to a linear progression. Things start, they accelerate, and they end. This creates a very predictable flow of signals from the body to the brain. However, if you overwhelm the system too early with high speed and high intensity, the brain actually begins to desensitize. It's a survival mechanism called neural adaptation. Essentially, the brain says, I've seen this before, and it levels out the sensation to keep from being overwhelmed. But we want the opposite. We want a hijack. By utilizing what I call understimulation, providing just enough sensation to keep him focused but not enough to let him reach a peak, you create a sensory vacuum. His nervous system starts reaching out, searching for that extra bit of input. This is where the magic happens. When you finally introduce the build-up, his brain is so primed and so sensitive that every tiny movement feels 10 times more intense than it actually is. You are essentially turning up the volume on his nerves. By withholding the frenzy, you make his body crave it with an intensity that bypasses his conscious mind. He isn't just feeling a physical sensation anymore, he's experiencing a total sensory takeover. It is the ultimate form of physical persuasion. You aren't just doing something to him, you are rewiring his response in real time, making sure that when the climax finally arrives, it isn't just a moment, it's a total system overload. Why slow feels faster? Have you ever noticed how the wait for a long anticipated vacation sometimes feels more exciting than the trip itself? That is the power of dopamine. In the world of intimacy, we often mistake speed for intensity. We think that if we move faster, the feeling must be stronger. But in reality, the brain process is slow, intentional movement with a much higher level of focus. When you slow down, you are forcing his brain to pay attention to every single millimeter of contact. You are creating what psychologists call anticipatory dopamine. Every time you move with that glacial, deliberate pace, his brain asks, is this it? Is the speed coming now? When you don't give it to him, those dopamine levels spike even higher. He becomes hyperfixated on you. This makes the experience feel faster emotionally because his mind is racing, even if his body is still. You are building a psychological pressure cooker. The slower you go, the more the tension mounts, and the more his surrender becomes inevitable. He is no longer in control of his own timeline. He is suspended in yours. This paradox is the key to the pattern we are discussing today. By mastering the art of the slow burn, you aren't just delaying the end, you are making every second leading up to it feel like a crescendo. This is how you turn a physical act into a profound emotional surrender. It creates a loop where the craving for the frenzy becomes so loud that his logic completely disappears. He isn't thinking about work or stress. He is entirely helplessly present in the moment you have created. Establishing total presence before we move into the physical rhythm of the pattern, we must address the atmosphere. You see, the body cannot fully surrender if the mind is still wandering or if the heart rate is spiked by anxiety. To turn him into a screaming mess, you first have to draw him into a world where only the two of you exist. This begins with what I call establishing total presence. It starts with the eyes. Before the pattern begins, look at him, not a fleeting glance, but a deep, lingering gaze that signals your complete intent. You are telling him, without a single word, that you are about to take him somewhere new. Next, focus on your breath. In the rush of the moment, it's natural for breathing to become shallow. I want you to intentionally slow yours down. Let your chest rise and fall in a rhythmic, heavy way. As you do this, something incredible happens. His body will instinctively try to match yours. This is called physiological mirroring. By calming your own nervous system, you are essentially plugging into his, forcing him to drop his guard. This is the quiet before the storm, the heavy, thick silence that makes the air feel charged with electricity. In this space, he is no longer thinking about the outside world. He is hyper-aware of your skin, your scent, and your proximity. You have successfully lowered the anchor. Now, the stage is set for the pattern to take hold of him completely. The commanding softness. There is a common misconception that taking control requires aggression or loud commands. In reality, the most profound form of power is found in softness. I want you to think of yourself as the commanding presence in the room, but your tools are gentleness and intention. When you begin to touch him, do it with a whisper-soft approach. Use the very tips of your fingers to trace lines that promise everything but give away nothing. Yet, this commanding softness creates a high-tension environment because it forces him to lean in. It makes him a seeker. He will find himself hanging on your every move, wondering when that soft touch will turn into something more substantial. This tone is crucial because it establishes that you are the one directing the energy. You aren't reacting to him. He is reacting to you. Keep your movements deliberate and unhurried. If he tries to speed things up, don't follow him. Instead, maintain your calm, intentional pace. Your serenity in the face of his growing desire is what builds the pressure. It's like a velvet glove that holds a firm grip. By staying in this soft but focused state, you are signaling to his subconscious that you are in total control of the experience. This creates a deep sense of safety for him to let go, while simultaneously ratcheting up the psychological stakes. He is now fully under your spell, waiting for the first beat of the pattern to begin. The 1-inch rule. Now we arrive at the foundation of the technique itself, the 1-inch rule. This is the part of the pattern that will test his resolve and begin the slow build to frenzy. While the instinct in a moment of passion is often to go deep and fast, the 1-inch rule demands the opposite. It requires you to move with an agonizingly slow, shallow rhythm, limiting the physical movement to just about an inch of depth. Why is this so effective? Because it creates a focused, intense point of contact that doesn't allow for the numbing effect of high-speed friction. You are essentially teasing the nerve endings without satisfying them. Imagine the sensation of a single drop of water hitting the same spot on a stone over and over. At first, it's barely noticeable, but over time, it becomes the only thing the stone can feel. That is what you are doing to his focus. By staying shallow and moving at a glacial pace, you are heightening his awareness of the tease. He will feel the tension building in his lower abdomen, a heavy pulsing sensation that he can't quite release. This is the understimulation we discussed earlier. It's enough to keep him on the edge, but not enough to let him over the cliff. As you maintain this tiny rhythmic circle or shallow thrust, watch his face. You will see the moment his eyes glaze over and his jaw tightens. He is starting to struggle against the slow pace, and that struggle is exactly what we want. You are building a reservoir of energy that has nowhere to go. This foundation is the most difficult part to maintain, but it is the secret ingredient that makes the eventual frenzy so explosive. You are teaching his body that even the smallest movement carries immense weight, breaking his rhythm. The biggest challenge you will face during this phase isn't your own technique, it's his instinct to take over. Most men are conditioned to take the lead the moment they feel intensity rising. They will try to shift their hips, increase the speed, or pull you closer to force a faster conclusion. This is where you must use your insider secret. You must physically anchor him to break his rhythm. This isn't about being bossy, it's about maintaining the integrity of the slow build, so the payoff is actually worth it. To do this, use your hands and your body weight strategically. If he tries to thrust upward, place your hands firmly on his chest or shoulders, not to push him away, but to steady him. This physical stop acts as a reset for his brain. It tells his nervous system, no, we aren't going there yet. You can also use your legs or your positioning to limit his range of motion, ensuring that the 1-inch movement remains the dominant sensation. Every time he tries to break into a faster pace, and you gently, firmly guide him back to your slow glacial rhythm, the psychological tension doubles. He begins to realize that he is not in charge of the clock. This realization triggers a unique form of surrender, a giving in to your pace that is incredibly liberating for him. He stops trying to reach the end and starts becoming obsessed with the present inch of movement. By breaking his habit of rushing, you are making him unforgettable to himself. You are providing an experience that stands in total contrast to the frantic, rushed intimacy he's used to. You are forcing him to feel every single second, and in doing so, you are turning his desire into a desperate, focused need that only your pattern can eventually satisfy. Once you have established the glacial foundation, it is time to introduce the sequence that acts like a master key for his nervous system. This is what I call the 3-2-5 pattern. Up until this point, you have kept him in a state of sustained low-level intensity. Now we are going to disrupt his expectations. The human brain is a pattern-seeking machine. It wants to find the rhythm so it can predict what happens next. By using the 3-2-5 secret code, you are essentially short-circuiting that predictive power, keeping him in a state of constant heightened alertness. Here is how the breakdown works. You begin with 3 long, deep, and incredibly slow movements. These are full-length, intentional strokes that remind his body of the depth available to him. They should feel heavy and languid. Immediately following those 3, you shift into 2 medium-paced movements. These are slightly faster, pushing the energy upward and signaling that the wait might be over. But then you throw the curveball, 5 very shallow, very quick flicker movements at the very entrance. These 5 movements are meant to be light, teasing, and almost frantic in their speed, but without the depth he craves. The psychology here is brilliant. The 3 slow movements build the desire, the 2 medium movements build the hope, and the 5 shallow movements create a desperate itch that he cannot scratch. By the time you finish the 5 shallow movements, his brain is screaming for the cycle to repeat or for the depth to return. When you go back to the beginning of the pattern, starting again with those 3 slow, deep movements, the contrast is so sharp that it feels like a physical shock to his system. You are climbing a staircase of sensation, but every time he thinks he's reached the top, you lead him back down a step only to start the climb again. This builds an internal pressure that is far more powerful than simple, repetitive motion. Watching for the break. As you execute the 3-2-5 pattern, your role shifts from the architect to the observer. You are looking for the break. This is the precise moment when his cognitive control is no longer a match for his physical response. To do this, you must become highly attuned to his feedback loop. You aren't just looking for pleasure, you are looking for the loss of composure. The first sign is usually the breath. Watch for the transition from deep rhythmic breathing to sharp involuntary hitches. When he starts to hold his breath or let out small broken sounds during the 5 shallow movements, you know the pressure is reaching a critical level. Pay attention to his hands. Is he gripping the sheets? Are his knuckles turning white? Is he trying to pull you closer with a force that feels almost reflexive? These are the indicators that the pattern is working. The most telling sign of the break, however, is the vocalization. It's that low guttural sound that he can't seem to suppress, the sound of a man who is no longer in his own head but entirely in his body. When you see these signs, your instinct might be to give in and speed up, but this is the moment where your power is at its peak. I want you to withhold the frenzy for just a moment longer than feels natural. When you see him on the verge of that total breakdown, go back to the glacial 1-inch movement one last time. This final pause is the ultimate psychological trigger. It pushes him into a state of absolute vulnerability. He is now completely at your mercy, his body vibrating with the need for release. By observing and directing this break, You ensure that the eventual explosion isn't just a physical climax, it's a total surrender of his will to your rhythm. You have become the master of his responses, and he is now perfectly prepared for the final phase. The release of the dam, and then the moment arrives. You have built the reservoir of tension so high that the walls are practically shaking. You've seen the signs, you've watched his composure crumble, and you've teased the finish line until he's desperate. Now you finally release the dam. This is the transition into the frenzy. You abandon the strict 3-2-5 counting and the glacial pacing. Instead, you merge the depth of the slow movements with the speed of the shallow ones. It is a sudden, unapologetic shift in tempo that his nervous system has been begging for. The shift should feel like a gear change in a high-performance engine. One moment you are the calm, steady pilot, and the next you are the storm itself. As you increase the pace and maintain that hard-won depth, all that anticipatory dopamine we talked about earlier finally finds its outlet. The transition is electric because it is the payoff of a long-form promise you made at the beginning of the encounter. You aren't just moving fast, you are moving with the weight of every slow second that came before. The energy in the room shifts from a heavy, pressurized silence to an intense, rewarding explosion of movement. This is where the control you've maintained finally pays its dividends, relinquishing control to the moment. This is the moment promised by the title, the transformation into a screaming mess. As the frenzy takes over, you will see a version of him that is rarely seen in the outside world. This is a man completely stripped of his cool, his logic, and his ego. Because you took the time to build the tension so precisely, his climax isn't just a standard physical release, it is a total system collapse. You may hear sounds you've never heard him make, involuntary guttural cries, or a loss of vocal control that signals he has been pushed beyond his limits. There is a profound sense of personal power in witnessing this. You are watching a man completely lose his grip on reality because of the journey you directed. In these final seconds, you can finally relinquish your own control and join him in that intensity, knowing that you were the one who orchestrated this masterpiece of intimacy. He is left breathless, overwhelmed, and utterly consumed by the experience. This frenzy is the direct result of your patience, your mastery of the pattern, and your willingness to lead. You haven't just given him a moment of pleasure, you have given him an experience of total, helpless presence. He is a mess, in the best possible way, entirely yours, entirely undone, and entirely grateful for the power of your touch. The glow of mastery as the intensity fades and the room returns to a quiet hum. Take a moment to realize what you've just done. This wasn't just about his reaction, it was about your agency. By mastering the 3-2-5 pattern and the glacial build, you stepped out of the passenger seat and became the navigator of your own desire. There is a unique, quiet confidence that comes from knowing you have the ability to unravel a partner so completely. This glow of mastery stays with you long after the lights are out, infusing your daily life with a new sense of personal power and feminine grace. Intimacy is a dialogue, and you've just learned how to lead the conversation with wisdom and intent. This connection isn't a performance, it's a profound sharing of energy where your pleasure is amplified by your partner's total surrender. So as you move forward, carry this secret knowledge with you. Experiment tonight. Watch the way he looks at you when you slow the world down and command the space between you. You have the map, the pattern, and the power. Now go create your own masterpiece of connection and shared ecstasy. This is your moment to truly shine,